Hello. So I thought I'd do another little video on the Tiger EB4. I've done a few before on my channel. Some of them explaining how to do service parts on them, bits and bobs like that, upgrades, that kind of stuff. The latest video I did was how to fit a pull start on the 21 engine. It's exactly the same as it is on the 28 engine and probably most other nitro cars. But this video, I've recently just acquired this one, this is an EB4 S3. So this is basically, it's fairly old car now, but it's the newer version of this one, which is the EB4 S2, or 2.5 as it was listed on the box, because this is kind of like the facelift model of the original. And I basically thought it'd be cool to do like a quick comparison video from my own personal experience to explain to people some of the main differences between the two cars, really. They're both very, very good cars. The Tiger stuff is genuinely really good. Straight out of the box, it's really good stuff. It's really reliable. They're pretty easy to maintain. I haven't really had any issues with them, to be fair. Build quality is really good as well. So yeah, so I'll kind of start off with the first one. So this is the EB4 S2, or 2.5. It's fitted with the Tiger Pro 21 engine. It's a great engine, really, really good all-rounder, good power. Revs nice and high. It's really easy to tune, really easy to get started, and it's really reliable. For example, if you look after them and you make sure you use after-run oil and your engine is tuned correctly and not running too lean or too rich all of the time, there's absolutely no reason why the engine can't last for years and years and years without ever needing anything doing to it. So this one is extremely clean, obviously, but I'm quite over the top with looking after stuff. So it does look a lot newer than it is. It's also got a slightly different heatsink on the top. This is from America. You can't get these in the UK, but I ordered this one from America. It was very expensive for what it is. I think it was about $50, which I think worked out at around £40. So £40 for a little cylinder head, which is basically just a piece of aluminium, is very expensive. But when you compare it to how it looks standard on the 28 engine of the S3, it's exactly the same cylinder head as you would get on the 21 of the S2, and you can see the difference. It looks quite boring compared to this one, which is quite cool. Yeah, so this is the S2. So as I said, Pro 21 engine, great engine. The four-wheel drive system is pretty much the same as the S3. The biggest difference, and I'll get to this the more I go on with this video. I keep saying so yeah, I did it again. Right, so the best thing with the S2 is the build quality, I think. It's built really, really well. It's extremely strong. The suspension is a great setup. The chassis is a real nice chassis. It's very, very sturdy aluminium. You can just about see how thick it is there. So it's just fairly well built, really, from the factory. The braking system's twin disc, so you have a disc on the front there. There's little pads. You can just about see the pads on the rear there, and then you've got your central differential in the middle there, and your clutch bell is down there. The drive shafts, this is one of the many things which I prefer and I think is much better on the S2 than it is on the S3. They are much thicker. So hopefully you'll be able to see this on camera. So this is the drive shaft on the S2. You can see the kind of size that the drive shaft is. Compare that to the S3. and it is noticeably thinner. You can see it is much thinner, and also the length of the drive shaft is much longer on the S3 than it is on the S2, and that does actually make a difference. You get much more what's the word I'm looking for, sort of kind of like a free play. So it's the S3 is a bit looser, whereas the S2 seems to be a bit more immediate. That they also are a lot stronger, obviously. It's not just the drive shafts that are thicker, the central shafts. There's the one on the S3, just about see that there, and compared to the sorry, that was the S2, sorry, that's the one on the S2. So compare that to the S3 one, you can just see in the middle there. I'm not sure if it is showing up on camera or not, but trust me, it is much thinner. I would say, looking at the two of them, there's probably around 2 mil, I'd say, 2 mil difference in width between the shafts on the S2 and the shafts on the S3. 2 mil might not sound a lot, but it is, especially if you have a crash or if you're a bit rough on the suspension, it will make a difference. So, let's try and think other stuff. So the suspension on the S2, standard suspension straight out of the box. It's great suspension, works really well. It's got good oil in as standard. Comes with the usual setup things that you can get to make the springs slightly harder or softer. It all works great. Again, can't fault the suspension. The battery box is great. Ignore this on top, this battery here, that's not standard, that's something that I've fitted. There's a little cooling fan here, which I fitted, which is linked to this battery pack. The reason I did that is because my engine is slightly modified, has a slightly different air filter on it. It's not just a metal gauze, there is foam on the inside of that as well. The exhaust is also modified. I'll get to that later. But if I do forget, then there are other videos I've made which explain some of the modifications that I've done on this car. So yes, that battery there is purely to control that cooling fan, but the battery box is completely standard. It's underneath there, right next to the servos in here. And the S3, it is exactly the same. So the servos, same place, servo box, same place. The steering servo is laid down on its side on the S3. Same position as the S2, it's just laid down on the side, and this linkage comes up and goes there. And the S2, the servo stood upright, and the linkage comes across and goes there. I haven't yet found much difference between how the servos work, but I will say, yet again, in favour of the S2, the steering is much better on the S2 than it is on the S3. So, going back to the engine, they're extremely reliable, as I said in the first place. You won't have any problems with them if you look after them well. And in terms of how long they'll last, this car here, I've never changed the engine. Original piston, rod is original, everything's original. The only thing I've ever changed on it is the glow plug and the pull starts, which they're wear and tear things. You'd change things like that on a real car. You'd change your spark plugs and your oil and things like that. So the engine itself is original, and the car is 10 years old. So that goes to show how long these engines can last if you look after them. It's 10 years old, this car, and it runs sweet as a nut. No problems at all. Starts first time, goes like hell, not a problem. So yeah, you look after them, and you've got a good car on your hands. The S3, pros of the S3, the 28 engine. The S2 is a 21, the S3 is a 28. They're both basically the same engine, they look exactly the same, they're set up in the same way, the carb is exactly the same. The only real difference is that the low end screw on the 28 engine is on the side, same side here, and on the S2 the screw is for the low end. You can just about see if my camera would focus. There's the screw there, so it's on the end of the slide for the carburetor on the S2. Doesn't really make much of a difference where it is, but that's the only real difference between the engine's physical appearance. How they run, so the S2, as I said, is a great all-rounder engine, plenty of power, goes really well, easy to maintain, easy to start. It would struggle a little bit low down, doesn't quite have the grunt of the 28, so that's probably the best way to compare them, is that the 28 engine is exactly the same as the 21 in every single way, as far as I can make out, apart from the fact that the 28 has more torque. So it does have a bit more grunt, doesn't really seem to rev any different to the 21 from what I can see, but torque wise and the way that it gets to the top end of its speed seems to be much quicker on the S3. So engine wise, that's probably the only real differences I can find. The S3 engine, which is a 28, just seems more lively. It's a more lively, eager version of the 21, really. But are you really going to notice that? Most people probably not. You're not going to notice a massive difference between the two. Not really. Maybe if you put a different pinion to get more top end, you probably would get a better benefit on the 28 engine because it's got more torque to help you get that higher end. Whereas the 21 doesn't quite have enough torque, so you're probably not going to gain that much really, and you'll probably lose quite a lot of acceleration if you put a different pinion gear on your clutch bell. That's probably about it. As far as general appearances go, the S3 is a great car, but I've still got to go with the S2. It just feels better built. It feels so much more of a good car. Everything just seems great out of the box, and there's so much more that you can do with these compared to the S3. I'm not having a go at it in any way. It's a brilliant car, and I'd highly recommend anyone to get one. You can't get them new anymore, unfortunately, but there are still some around secondhand. But just beware, if you're buying a secondhand nitro car of any kind, try to find out about it. Make sure that the person who has owned it knows what they're doing. Don't buy it off of someone that has bought it for Christmas for their son, or someone like that hasn't got a clue what they're doing. They've literally just bought it for a toy. They've probably used it 3 or 4 times, run it completely wrong, and ruined the engine. And then they've probably just given up with it because it won't run again, chucked it in a box and left it for about 6 years. So if you buy a second-hand nitro car that's like that, you're just going to end up with more problems than it's worth. So try to find one that's in good condition, that's been owned by someone who knows what they're doing, a nitro enthusiast or somebody that knows what they're doing, and then you should be fine. This one, for example, I bought this way underpriced. These S3s in this kind of condition usually go for around 180 to £200 in good conditions. You can find them a bit cheaper. The S2s are becoming very, very rare now, so you probably struggle to find one of those. But again, if you do, around the £200 mark for one of these secondhand. But I would definitely recommend to go for the S2. You're just going to have a much, much better car on your hands. And that's probably about it, really. The overall differences aren't really that extreme, but the ones that are noticeable are build quality more than anything. This one just feels a bit more cheap, a bit more thrown together. It's kind of like they were running out of ideas with the S2 and they didn't want to replace it, but people that were interested in these cars and stuff must have been asking model shops and things like, oh, when are we getting a replacement for the S2 and blah blah blah. It probably got back to Thunder Tiger and they were like, yeah, good point, when are we doing a replacement for the S2? And somebody probably went, oh, I'll just knock one up now out of spare parts. So they've whacked in the engine from the MTA4 and just bolted it to basically any old chassis that they had, tried to make it look as similar to the S2 as they can, and away you go. That's what it feels like anyway. It doesn't feel like they really tried with this. The parts on it, I'm not having a go with. The genuine parts are fine. It just feels like it was rushed. That's about it. I hope that was in some way useful. I will do a video soon of the 2 cars running, and show you the differences on how they run, acceleration, things like that. And yeah, we'll go from there. So there you go. EB4 S2 on the left, EB4 S3 on the right. Thanks for watching.